All right, good morning, everyone. We can go ahead and get started here. My name is Grant Taylor. I am the Safety Program Manager at Eastgate Regional Council of Governments. And we are going to have a special guest in here today also, Joey Kemp, who's our Transportation Planner. Today is going to be our speaking on bike and pedestrians. It's focused largely on the proven safety countermeasures for bike and pedestrians. It's a part one of two because there are a large amount of different countermeasures that get highlighted for the proven safety countermeasures. We'll be just focusing on a couple of them today. So within this, it's going to be a webinar format of about a 30-minute presentation followed by open discussion. You'll have the Q&A option. You can ask questions in there. The chat is also available. If you have any questions come up, feel free to ask them. Want to hear questions, want to hear what everybody's thinking about. It also is being recorded. We're going to have it posted online. You'll get a link afterwards. It'll get sent out to the recording. And then we're also posting it on our YouTube channel we have. So it'll be up there as well as a long term, and maybe putting together as like a little playlist of each of the meetings as they get built out further and further. And if you don't feel comfortable asking a question because you're more introverted like I usually am, feel free to reach out to me afterward. You can email me or any other way you want to reach out to contact me. I'm absolutely always glad to talk about any of this stuff and get this information out to anybody, and I enjoy this. So I want to do a little bit here just real quick on some of the crash statistics for the Eastgate area, which is the Mahoning and Trumbull County. Got here showing the total number of crashes for 2025, which was 9,859. Going back, you can see the little bar chart over here showing each year leading up to this year. So far, within the first 2 months of 2026, we've had 1,585. And I also included last year where we were at the end of February, which is a little bit higher. So we're a little bit down on the number of crashes overall. Also have the fatal or serious injury crashes, 253 in 2025 for the area. First 2 months of this year, though, we're up 34, which is a little bit higher than it was last year. And then fatal crashes last year, there were 37 between the two counties. So far this year, we've only got 3 were in the database, whereas last year we were at 5, so we're down a little bit there. So a little bit of an improvement overall, I'd say, but the reduction of total crashes and at least fatal crashes being down, it's a very good thing. So a lot of the thing we've been talking about also is the safe system approach, which is one of the big things that we focus on. Within this, it comes down to a few different things where the focus for safety is, which is typically comes down to being safer vehicles, safer speeds, safer roads, post-crash care, and safer people. The safer vehicles deals a lot more with focusing on cars that are designed to have more safety aspects into them, making sure that they've got the best seat belts, the collision detection stuff, which overall does promote a lot more safety. Safer speeds is all about having the roads that are going to have appropriate speed limits and having people traveling on the roads. Speed's a huge component of safety for this because if you're going faster, you have less time to react. Other people have less time to react to you, but at the same time, a higher speeds result in a higher risk of the severity of the injuries. So having a safer speed reduces the chances of a crash happening, but also reduces the severity of crashes. Safer roads comes down to looking at the design of roads, how they are built, what type of stuff could be improved over time. It's looking at the infrastructure and looking at lanes, how stuff, including features like bike lanes or sidewalks, can help with reduce the safety, which we'll talk about today. Post-crash care goes into a lot more of dealing with what the after effects of it is. It's going to be looking at how what type of the ambulance situation comes down to getting to the hospital, but also goes a lot into looking at what's looked at afterwards and how it's viewed, what type of can be learned from each one. And safer people is a lot more of the educational component, and it's making sure that people know about how to drive on the roads and how to be safe and all the different aspects of that. The big things is, death and serious injuries are unacceptable. We want to get rid of those. But it's also humans do make mistakes. Humans are vulnerable. Because the responsibility is shared, safety is proactive, redundancy is crucial. A lot of what the idea ends up being with the safe system approach, it's referred to a lot like as a Swiss cheese method, where that if you have a whole bunch of different redundancies in place, where that even if something does go wrong, hopefully the next redundancy will help to reduce the chance of crash or the severity of the crashes. So the goals with this series I'm going through is going to be keeping the topics short and entertaining. I want to have keeping them to these half-hour meetings with half an hour open discussion afterwards. Wanting to focus on topics of education that are for concern for members. So a lot of this is going to be built on what type of interaction comes out of these different talks. A perfect example is the first meeting we had with the introduction. There was a lot of questions came up around bike and pedestrian. So that's why this was the first topic to come up, was going to be this, because it was what it seemed like people were the most interested in learning more about. We want to make sure it's easy access to information. It's very casual, friendly. We want discussion. We want to be able to talk. And it's about making that connection with lots of people and knowing that we are here and we're glad to talk and help and figure out how else to expand safety in our region. So mentioned earlier is proven safety countermeasures. So the proven safety countermeasures is put together by the FHWA, and it is a listing of countermeasures that are considered to be things that will generally just work in most situations. They got a lot going into it where their website you can go to their website, and you can look at what your road condition is, what your traffic is, what type of issues you have. And it can help come up with generalized solutions that will most likely work for most situations a lot of time. The proven safety countermeasures are broken up in 5 categories: speed management, roadway departure, intersections, cross-cutting, and then a pedestrian and bicyclists. And that's where we're looking at starting our focus here for today. Within the pedestrian bicyclist, there are a few different countermeasures that have been put forward: crosswalk visibility enhancements, leading pedestrian intervals, medians, pedestrian refuge islands in urban and suburban areas, pedestrian hybrid beacons, rectangular rapid flashing beacons. All of those are excellent, wonderful ways of looking at safety, and that is what will be part of part 2. And as for today, with part 1, we're going to be talking about walkways, bicycle lanes, and road diets or roadway reconfigurations. All right, so the first thing on here is walkways. Walkway is any type of defined space or pathway for a person traveling by foot using a wheelchair. It can be pedestrian walkways, shared use paths, sidewalks, or even a roadway shoulder. Some little different data points we've got here about this is for sidewalks. They've done a lot of studies of these different countermeasures, and they provide a lot of data about them. So for adding in a sidewalk along a roadway, can result in a 65 to 89% reduction in crashes involving pedestrians walking along the roadways, which is a concern for a lot of different places have issues with this. Having those sidewalks greatly reduces the chances of having these accidents. At the same time, is having even a paved shoulder can result in a reduction in crashes for the pedestrians along the roadway. Typically with the paved shoulder, you're looking at more defined space and whether they still have room to get off the road and out of travel lanes. So within this types of walkways is you've got walkways and sidewalks. These are, when thinking about walkways, a lot of time what people are first thinking of, it's paths designed for pedestrians to travel along. Sidewalk is these paths that follow along the roadway they follow along a roadway. Well, a walkway is one that doesn't necessarily follow a roadway. It could be a path that goes through a parking lot or cuts through a grass area to maybe connect 2 different roadways together. It doesn't necessarily actually follow the road, but you're still providing access for people to travel and providing that safety measure of having that walkway. Next thing would be shared use paths and side paths. These are a little bit of a mixture. This is a bike and pedestrian focused one. There's paths that are designed for pedestrians and bicycles to travel on. They're typically going to be stuff like what your bike trails are made up of. Similar to sidewalk, side path is one that follows along a roadway, and a shared use path is one that doesn't necessarily follow a roadway. It just travels along and provides access for people to travel. And then roadway shoulders are the paved areas of roadway. It's typically marked separate. It's going to have edge lines that denote that there's the edge of a travel lane, and the paved shoulder itself is separate. Usually there's a little bit of a wider area space there for allowing people to safely walk. Works a lot better for a lot more of a rural area where you may not have as high of traffic for pedestrians, while still being able to easily add in some sort of measure for these people to be able to travel. One to show here, this is State Route 170 in Poland and Poland Township. It's a sidewalk that was put in through Safe Routes to Schools and was added in to allow for students to be able to walk to where their high school is, because this connects a large amount of Poland down to where the high school is, provides a way for students to travel easily and safely to get to the school, but also is a way for anybody else in the community traveling along it. It's a major path that follows along here and opens up a lot for the travel. Some of the important things to look at when also looking at stuff like sidewalks is sidewalk width is important to consider. Typically, there is looking at about a 5-foot width is what you want to have for most sidewalks. There is a bunch of different tables that go together to help determine what the appropriate sidewalk width is. 5 feet is generally the best for generally the minimum. It can go up higher depending on different types of what the situation is for what type of roadway it is, how much travel there is, what the environment is. So having something like a central business district where you're having it in might be more of an 8-foot width because of a higher pedestrian volume. So you want to make sure there's room for people to be able to cross back and forth. All of that type of information is they have a lot of this information in Ohio has the multimodal design guide, which is an absolutely amazing resource. And I'll be being sure to send out a link of information to this. It goes into the recommendations for a lot of this design and the engineering type stuff, and has charts in there to help out with figuring out more about what type of widths you should be looking at for different situations. So next thing to talk about is going to be about bike lanes. So bike lanes are typically going to be designated spaces for bicyclists to travel. Can range from having it as shared lane with markings to separated bike lanes that travel is a complete separate entity. Some of the quick information they had from the proven safety countermeasures, converting traditional or flush buffered bicycle lanes to separated bicycle lanes with delineators can reduce crashes up to 53% for bicycle and vehicle crashes. But also they got the information here about, a bicycle lane additions can reduce crashes. In an urban 4-lane undivided local road, you can get they're talking about a 49% reduction, while is in a urban 2-lane undivided, you're looking at about a 30% reduction they found. These statistics come from where that they've looked at these conditions over a large amount of projects and have put these numbers together for what they've found when these projects are put in. A couple things I wanted to go into some different types of bike lanes that get included. So there are shared lane and bicycle boulevards are the first two I want to talk about, and they're a little bit similar. So shared lane, such as right here on Wick that we have, it's where they have markings indicating, that this is a lane that's a shared lane that the bicyclists are using that is still part of the same travel lane. Sometimes we'll include signs telling you if it's, bicyclists can use the full lane. They're designed mostly as a way of just making out, hey, this is where people are going to be traveling and bikes possibly, and making sure that drivers are aware of this and are looking out for it. A bicycle boulevard is not something I'm familiar about in our area currently. I know there's some plans for one, but the bicycle boulevards are typically done more of as an area that's done as shared lanes. Usually it can be either a wider network or even just a single corridor, maybe with some side roads. But the idea of these is it's areas where you have a lower speed limit down to 25, sometimes even 15. Often they might include stuff like speed humps throughout the area, but it's designed to sort of be an area to say this whole area around here is going to include bikes in it, not just necessarily that one road, and generally designed around creating a network there for a boulevard. It's usually done as something maybe like as a small neighborhood might include these. I know there's some I'm familiar with. I've driven around in Columbus where they are small neighborhoods that are considered to be bike boulevards, where that it's just designated, hey, make sure there's lots of bikes throughout all these roads, make sure you're watching out for them. Designed to have the lower road speed limits included, a lot of signage, making sure it's aware of it, and can include some sorts of additional infrastructure for the bikes as well. The next thing, of course, is going to be paved shoulders. Similar to the sidewalks, paved shoulders are also a very big thing that can be helpful for adding in additional bicycle safety. Typically, you're at least wanting a shoulder of 5 feet for bicyclists, preferably going both directions as well. With the higher speeds or higher volumes, it may want to look at even wider than that. So the paved shoulders is similar to the lanes where you want to be able to provide that ability for these people to travel while still keeping them somewhat separate though from the necessarily the travel lane. Works a lot better for a lot more of like the 2-lane roadways necessarily because of the ability for means that they can get past in these areas with less risk to bicyclists. Whereas if it's a shared lane, it can be a little bit more concerning if they're small lanes. So this is a way of taking an existing roadway and adding a little bit more onto it potentially to provide a safer environment. Next thing show here is going to be bike lanes. Bike lanes are in a way similar to being the paved shoulders, but they're just more denoted to that they are designed for bikes and have a lot more infrastructure gets involved usually at intersections, allowing better connections there, including turning lanes and stuff like that that can help out with the bikes. Still very similar to the paved shoulder with the widths of 5 feet more. You'd like to have them on both sides. Again, when it comes down to like the width and stuff like that, the multimodal design guide has a lot of information there because there's a whole table in there of different conditions that didn't quite fit as well for fitting into a presentation like this, but is great information that can be discussed and looked at more. Next thing is just group together 3 here, which is buffered, raised, and separated bike lanes. It's all a little bit of similarity here. It's buffered lanes is typically going to be your bike lanes that are separated away from the roadway by an area of space, some sort of horizontal separation, whether it's going to be having just a marked off line space that's open between them that's for nobody to travel in, or it could be done as a bike lane that's on the other side of a parking lane, something that just separates them a little bit further away from the roadway. Raised lanes are where there's a vertical separation, where it's something like a curb or even just a mounted curb, not necessarily a full curb, that separates them out a little bit, provides a little bit of extra safety for them. And separated bike lanes, which is what we've got here showing on Front Street in downtown Youngstown that was recently in. It's going to have your vertical and horizontal separations. It's separated away from the roadway. It's also still got the vertical. A lot of time though is you're also going to have those some sort of additional elements of the buffer that provide safety, such as the tree line that goes along here that still provides that extra little safety. But also can include the fact that there's a sidewalk running alongside it as well. Want to show another local example here of something specific that was done, which is up on Rayan Avenue. That there were they added bike lanes going along both sides of the roadway here, which is connected right up against the university here, Youngstown State University, that helps provide additional way for students to travel along. The buildings you're seeing here are on the left side are dorms, so it's got a lot. One of the great things here is you've got a lot of the potential pedestrians having access there to give these people a safe way of traveling around. Next thing I want to go into, which is the road diets and roadway reconfigurations. So these are typically done as something similar to a reduction in lanes. Looking at usually the average daily traffic is one of the biggest indicators, can help for a lot of this stuff. A lot of numbers to get looked at are from 15,000 all the way up to some places even consider 22,000. 15,000 is closer to what I've seen. A lot more communities and groups have looked at as being this is the point where 4 lanes of traffic starts becoming, or the 2 lanes of traffic in each direction becomes more of a necessity or a reason to have that. Whereas under that, it's a lot more likely that you'd be able to function just as well with having 3 lanes of traffic. So these are looking at taking a roadway which has 2 lanes of travel going in either direction or more than 2 lanes and reducing down those travel lanes, such as that typically you've done as adding in 1 lane of travel in each direction, a center turn lane, and then paved shoulders or parking or bike lanes can be added along the sides of the roadways as well, or anything to help that reduces that down to a smaller travel area. The 4-lane to 3 lanes have typically result in a 19 to 40% reduction in total crashes. A lot of the point with these road diets and why they are so helpful is first off is going to be the speed issue. When people drive, a lot of time what they do is they will drive what they feel safest at. When you have something that is a 2 lanes of travel going in one direction with a low volume of cars, people can feel like they have freedom to drive faster, even if they're not meaning to, and they're trying to stay at the speed limit. When they have a big open road with no other cars, they will typically end up speeding up to where that they feel the most comfortable driving at. Reducing it down to the 1 lane in each direction helps, and bringing in those lines where people feel like they have a smaller road area to drive can help people feel like this isn't someplace I should speed, or and will help them feel more like they are driving at the appropriate speed closer to the speed limit. The other big thing here, of course, is, if you have something like a center turn lane, it can help a lot for areas where there's a lot of turning traffic. When you get the 2 lanes going each direction, you'll occasionally have somebody turning left, and then people are trying to go around them if they can't turn left right away, and can cause some increased risks there. Whereas having that center turn lane is letting them get out of the road, out of the travel way, and turn when they have time. Additionally, having that extra space along the sides of being able to add in the paved shoulder or a bike lane is adding in those additional countermeasures that will help promote safety, whether it's for bikes or pedestrians. One example of roadway diet throughout this area that has been recently done is 5th Avenue in downtown Youngstown. There's a big one that was recently done. You can see here on the before picture that there are several travel lanes going in each direction. It's big, it's open. While as in the after drops down to having the 1 travel lane with shared lanes going in each direction. It does have some spots where it's got the turn lanes can go in there. You can see for dedicated turns at some of the intersections. They're also able to, on the right, you can see where there's a little bit of a tree lawn area next to the sidewalk, which is one additional bonus that the sidewalk was able to come in, or the curb came in a little bit and added that additional buffer to keep the cars separated from the sidewalk, which is another great additional feature there by turning it from just a raised separation to a actually separated. But they also were able to take advantage further up with that reduced roadway width to add in some stuff like some side areas for buses to pull off and use what was before the travel lane. Now that they can move over there and have a spot where the buses can stop and let people unload and load on while allowing traffic to still move around them easily. And now I'm gonna go ahead and, well, if anybody have any questions at this point in time they'd like to bring up, I did just see if there's, let's see. But we do have Joe Kemp from our office is in here to talk a little bit about the TAP program, which is Transportation Alternatives Program. It was brought up a little bit last month. It's focused a lot more on this stuff. And with that, I'll let Joey take over.
All right, good morning, everyone. Thanks for having me again, Grant. Not again, but we're all together. So today I'm just going to go over the Transportation Alternatives Program, more commonly referred to as TAP. So what is TAP? TAP is a federal funding program that's part of the Transportation Improvement Program, which is the funding programs that I manage here at Eastgate, funding through the projects that are defined as transportation alternatives. And as we like to say at Eastgate, they're projects that promote getting from point A to point B without using a vehicle. So without these more conventional ways of travel that we're used to in our area. Who can apply for TAP? That's a big question. Local government, so that's going to be your counties, townships, villages, towns, and cities, regional transportation authorities, transit agencies, natural resources, so like your state and local park districts. And there are a few others that are not as common. What projects are eligible for TAP? You can see a lot of the mentioned proven safety measures that Grant went over in the past couple minutes are able to be funded through this program. So those are going to be sidewalks, mixed paths, bike lanes, bike ped signals, traffic calming techniques, lighting, and quite a few more. TAP's not a very big program in terms of our three programs in the Transportation Alternatives Program. So TAP is the smallest of those three. Typically, we see about 680,000 allocated to our area. These programs run on a 2-year cycle here at Eastgate. So you're looking to apply every other year if you do apply for TAP funding. And as you can see, the funds do pull forward a little bit if they're left over. So how can you apply for TAP? Good question. You can expect the next round to open up in about a little over a year, so summer of 2027. Applications and more guidance on this program can be found on our website at www.eastgatecog.org. And then from the top, you can find programs, hover over that button, hover over the transportation button, and then all the way at the bottom is the Transportation Improvement Program. This is just an example of what our application looks like here at Eastgate. You can see it's very minimal, one page, just the front, and just some basic details about the project if you would like to get started. It is worth mentioning, though, that TAP funds are only available for the construction phase of the project, so the design and other phases cannot be funded with this program. And with that, I'll just open it up to any questions about this program. I know it was a very brief overview of the program, and as always, if you'd like to know more, go ahead and reach out to me directly or reach out to Grant and he'll get you in contact with me. But do not see any questions coming through, so kick it back to Grant.
All right. Um, thank you, Tricia. She's been sharing some great resources also for the manual informed traffic control devices and sharing about LTAP information coming up, which is amazing. LTAP is a great resource that's open. I highly recommend checking out their stuff. I've learned a lot and it's been a big motivation for me for a lot of stuff that I've done. I also did share a link to ODOT's the manual multimodal user design guide, which again, that's where a lot of the information about how the bike lanes and sidewalks should be looked at, and it goes into so much more. It is a amazing document with a lot of great information. I highly recommend checking out if you have any interest in bicycles or pedestrians or roadway setups even. With that, does anybody have any questions about any of the stuff that's been talked about or they want to know more about or any locations you have concerns about? Let's see. All right, Gary, so you got your hand raised. Let's see. You should be able to turn on your microphone now if you'd like.
Okay. Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. A couple quick questions. I guess what percent reduction in accidents should we anticipate seeing for using Sharrows? Say 2-lane road, 5,000 ADT. I mean, what kind of benefit should we receive from utilizing Sharrows? It's something I'd like to get into more often, just because low cost. I mean, it's something we can work with the individual communities on. And then second part of that question would be, do you recommend using signage along with the Sharrows, those bike routes?
So I am not sure off the top of my head about the exact reductions that are expected out of that. It's definitely something I can double check on and get back to you about. With that is, I do think the signage is very important. It can help highlight out the fact that it is the bike lanes. It can help remind people that they should be watching for bikes. And people are able to ride in bike lanes anywhere. They're not without bike lanes. I mean, they're allowed to travel lanes anywhere. It's absolutely allowed to be done. But the bike lanes typically is more about making sure to remind people that there are people riding in these areas. That's why it's a lot more focused on focused towards trying to promote that safety and remind people there. It's like where people are going to be traveling at. So I think it does. I mean, there's always, of course, the fact that the too many signs can make it so people aren't noticing them, of course, which is an issue. But having some that highlight, a lot of time it's recommended is potentially doing them after intersections or after major intersections, at least, of tying in some signage there so that new people entering the roadway are reminded about it. One additional thing I know that I've been one of the things thought about a lot, which is there can be a lot of discussion about the idea of setting up a bike networks or how to connect different bike lanes together. And beyond that, a lot of it can come down to, though, is that you don't always necessarily have to have bike lanes connected to other bike lanes, because you might have one section of bike lane and a very low stress road that's not traveled as much that connects that to the next section of bike lane, where you don't necessarily have to have something connecting there. But a bike lane where you're going to have the higher stress, the higher traffic, that's more of where you want to look at, where you need these at in a lot of situations. I said I'll look into the what type of reduction is for Sharrows has come up, and I'll be able to get back to you on that.
All right. Thanks, Grant. That answers that.
Absolutely. So we had some questions that come in as well before with the signups. One person asked about in Trumbull County with less public transportation, they're concerned about residents getting around. Is walking and bicycles safe? How can individuals help make it more safe? There's a lot of areas where it is absolutely safe, and there's some areas where it may not be as safe. And when it comes down to from this viewpoint of not necessarily looking at the infrastructure, but looking at how people can be safe. Important things, of course, is going to be following along with the roadways and riding the correct way on the roadways. Whereas following along with traffic, not against traffic, is important for people that are riding bicycles. People are walking, if they are forced to walk in the roadway, should be walking against traffic. That way for them, it's people are walking, it's easier for them to see traffic coming and be able to step out off the side of the roadway. Whereas you want people that are biking to be following along with traffic, because one thing is the speed differential, when you're traveling at a higher speed going towards something, it makes a bigger difference, and can make them a little bit less safe, a lot more risk of injuries if something does happen. But also with the bikes, a lot of it comes down to also is that you want them riding where people are expecting them to be and where they're going to be watching for them more. Within the education, there's one of the biggest things that comes out of education for people walking and biking is being visible is a really big issue that can come up, wanting to make sure that people are wearing something that makes it so that they're visible, especially at night or in rain, or if having something reflective is a great thing to have. Having any sort of lights. Along with that, having bike lights is a really big thing there of making sure that they have bike lights, including, even having brake lights or rear lights, having it to make sure that you are visible. That's usually where the biggest issue comes up there, is including that visibility. See, we had another one, which was about the updating a safe route to schools plan and how to use that plan for future projects. What are the restrictions? So for the safe route to schools is, everybody doesn't know, is a great program by ODOT. It's one of the additional plans topics coming up. Developing a plan for your schools. It works a lot with the schools. It works learning about what students are doing for school, how they travel to school, putting together a plan. And then the question more about is how you take that plan to the next step. And the first thing, of course, is going to be looking at safe route to schools again, because the fact you can apply for funding through there. It's a great program. Looking at additional projects there of how you can utilize that and figure out what's going to be important to you there and applying for that. But there also is going to be stuff like the TAP program, which is another option of being able to take some of those projects there and seeing if they will work into the TAP project, or if there's safety concerns that there's also the aspect of looking into safety funding and how else it can be built out there. So taking that plan, using the same resources, and also, of course, we've got us, or ODOT's also got a lot of great resources, being able to reach out to them and figure out what it is that you want to do next and seeing how we can build on it. Got another comment about Salt Springs Road at I-80 interchange in Weathersfield with red light running. Possibly with signal timing, short durations, truck moments, slow reaction times. That that's something we'll probably want to look at a little bit more, with maybe have a discussion about. I'm familiar with the area. I do know what's there. There's a large amount of truck stops throughout that area. There's also I know there's a lot of signals in there. I believe that there's some changes coming to the signals, but I have to double check that information. And I'm not sure about the signal timing, how that's set up there off the top of my head. Within that, something definitely could have some additional conversations about and talk about. Got another comment about people running red lights, passing drivers in center turn lanes. That is a problem in a lot of areas. There are definitely some areas where it's become a bigger problem. A lot of times stuff that can help with that I've seen that gets done is looking at adding in some places medians to where that you may have a center turn lane, but coming up to an area and having, if there's not going to be any turning, you can have a median, or having delineators that are stopping the left-hand turns can also help out with reducing people passing around. The biggest thing for this a lot of time is it's also looking at the enforcement issue. Those are some of the ways I've seen at least being looked at for how to reduce that issue. And I think that is all the questions we had that came in ahead of time. And as I was doing that, that question came in again anyways. At this point, if anybody has any other questions they'd like to ask or discuss, feel free to put anything into chat or questions and answers, or raise your hands. But beyond that, that covers most of what was wanted to be discussed for this time. I do have. I've also went ahead and put in the chat right now is signups for the next one, which is going to be on April 27th at 10 a.m. It's going to be the part 2 of Pedestrian Bicyclists, which will be going more into the crosswalk visibility enhancements, pedestrian intervals, medians, pedestrian refuge islands, hybrid beacons, and rectangular rapid flashing beacons. So it'll be a few more than was covered this time, but there'll be a little bit smaller topics for each individual one. So I greatly appreciate everybody coming in and learning. I hope to see everybody next time, and I really appreciate Joey jumping in and bringing in additional information for us. And thank you guys all so much. I'll stick around here for just a couple minutes in case anybody has any other questions. But other than that, I hope you all have an absolutely wonderful day. Okay, just saw the hand raised from Mike. I have turned it on so you can have your camera and microphone are on if you'd like to ask anything or talk about anything. Okay, and he left as I said that, so I'll follow up. All right, thank you guys all again.